All right, welcome to STO Psych. I'm Stephen Downey, a clinical psychologist from Australia, in the office today. Today we're doing a breakdown of the Am I the Asshole Reddit thread. Been doing those recently. If you want to chime in, hit us up in the comments. If you want me to review something that's outside of Reddit, also leave that in the comments. I'm open to doing those things. Yeah, the link to the Reddit that we discussed will be in the description of the video, like normal. Yeah, if you like it, leave a like. If you want to see more like this, hit subscribe. Today we'll be doing the top one. So the way we normally pick this is looking at whatever is the top one in the Am I the Asshole Reddit thread that is not an update, which it looks like this one here. Now, I will have to drag things around somewhat just because my camera is in the way. So what I might do is actually I'll read the title back here and then I'll go in. Am I the asshole because, sorry, I'll read it from beginning to end and then I'll do a breakdown of it from there. Am I the asshole because I told my sister that I wouldn't help her leave the state to get a medical procedure she is actively against until she told our parents? All right. I don't think I need to spell it out, but I'm going to do so. My 19-year-old sister is a hardcore evangelical. I was until I got to university. It has not opened her eyes at all. Everything is still black and white. She recently discovered that while abstinence is the only guaranteed effective birth control method, you actually have to practice it. She did not. And since all other forms of birth control are a sin, they didn't use any. Fucking idiots. She came to my apartment to ask for help. My apartment, where, according to her, I'm living in sin and fornicating, both accurate facts that I take pride in. I asked her if it was going to be a virgin birth. She screamed at me that I was being an asshole for mocking her beliefs. I said I was mocking her hypocrisy. Our state just banned abortion. Even if the health of the mother or the fetus is in danger, it's ridiculous. I told her that I'd help her out. All she had to do was tell our parents why I had to take time off work and she has to take time off school. She said they would disown her. That is maybe true. I don't know. But they didn't speak to me for a year after I moved in with my boyfriend. I wouldn't actually make her do this. I love her, even though she's an idiot. I took her and we came back. She is okay physically, but not so much in her mind. She's having a hard time reconciling what she did. I kind of feel bad about rubbing her beliefs in her face before agreeing to help her. All right. So what was the question? Hang on, I got to go back again because again, I didn't bring my camera stand in, so I've got my camera essentially hanging over the monitor, but now it covers the top strip, so deal with it. Am I the asshole because I told my sister I wouldn't help her leave the state until she told our parents? Right. Yep. Yes, but you didn't actually make her do that. So fair enough. All right, so this one here actually has thrown me a little bit because I'm not really seeing a problem here. This individual does not share her sister's beliefs. And I think that if I'm really breaking this down, this is quite simply before I helped her, I reminded her of the fact that she rubs in my face that I am living in sin and fornicating, according to her beliefs. And so when she comes to me and needs my values, suddenly they're okay. Where before that, she was just as happy to basically make fun of me and tell me I was living my life wrong when her values weren't in question. Yes, that's a rubbish thing to do. It's sort of like, yes, if you've got values, like I obviously have my own set of values. As a psychologist, I come in and I see people, but I work within my own context. I have my own values. I think, like every one of us does. The thing is, as a psychologist, yeah, I leave that at the door. As her sister, there's no obligation on her to leave that at the door at all. Particularly if you've been on the receiving end of that. I am almost never on the receiving end of my clients' criticisms regarding my own values. If that were to happen, it's probably because I've stuffed up bringing them in the first place. They just don't belong. Like, people don't come to see me to ask me about my value set. Every now and again, it sort of becomes relevant. And if that's the case, I actually will ask them specifically, do you want me to bring this into session? And if they say yes, I'll record that in my notes. I'll literally say, given verbal permission at such and such to bring X into the session, I will sign it my own name and date it. Now, maybe that's partially because I'm just kind of paranoid, but that is how much my values do not belong in the room of the people I'm working with. Sometimes what people want and what you're able to provide are so different that you cannot work with that individual. Yep. That happens. That's normal. Like, but Is this that situation? Absolutely not. You know, like I don't owe that to any of my siblings, for instance. I'm completely capable and willing to tell them what I think about their life, etc., from my own values point. But I would then expect to be held to that values point if I then wanted to go and do something different. Now, what's the situation at hand? First off, I have a 19-year-old, right? So if I do this for any length of time, which it is my intention to do so, you're going to hear me say again and again, these people don't have fully formed prefrontal what the hell am I looking for? Prefrontal cortex, right? Basically, if you think about the front part of the brain, when we think about us, the me that I know, that part of me actually only lives in the front, like, this much of my brain. The rest of it, which is probably the majority of me, is all essentially subconscious, right? But that front part matures as we grow. And so, generally speaking, and I know this is a generalization, so there's going to be a bell curve, and there'll be some people that are matured at 16. The average person doesn't fully develop their the consequences part of their brain until 25. I don't know now that I'm saying that's coming out of my mouth. I know that's the case for males. It could be slightly earlier for females. I might have to look that up. But the bottom line is I look at a 19-year-old and I go, okay, we're dealing with somebody that is just out of childhood. Just out, right? I'm not expecting them to have a complete sense of themselves together as yet. Mostly, but I'm expecting to find parts that just don't fit with other parts because, like I just don't come to a 19-year-old and expect them to have a fully formed like identity where they know themselves in all of their situations. A great deal of the time, they simply haven't been tested, So we get to situations like this. Abstinence is the only guaranteed effective method. You actually have to practice it. She did not. Since all other forms of birth control are a sin, they didn't use any. I would question this as to whether or not this is fact or the opinion. This is written from the perspective of somebody who is she's not happy with her sister for obvious reasons. So she's not writing this in a way that shows like charity for her sister. I'm not sure about whether or not this statement is actually factually correct. So, for instance, there are just other options here. She might have sort of been using some munted method where she's like, oh, it's not my time in the cycle, and therefore I don't have to. She might have been doing so within Christian circles. My understanding is there's this new like sex that isn't sex, allegedly. People trying to find loopholes where it's only sex if you move it, and so the penis can go in and the vagina can sort of, the usual penis and vagina stuff, but apparently that's not sex as long as it's not moving, right? So now, obviously, that sounds ridiculous to a lot of people, but for kids that are horny and looking for loopholes, this sort of stuff makes sense to them. So I don't begrudge anybody that, but it could be that they're like, well, if we're not having sex, then you can't get pregnant, right? And frankly, within some evangelical households, they get a level of sex ed that would allow them to believe that sex, unless you've got the intention, you can't fall pregnant. I would not put it beyond some evangelical households to believe this. So I'm just saying that when I come to a statement such as, all others are sin and they didn't use any, for somebody who is already not practicing abstinence, I'm just not sure that this necessarily follows. They could have done other things. It could be the old failed pullout, or it could even be a successful pullout from somebody that doesn't understand that pre-cum, as in, so the generally speaking, as a male gets aroused, he will release some ejaculate, which people generally refer to as pre-cum. Pre-cum does contain sperm. They're very low sperm counts, but sperm is still present, and so it is entirely possible to get pregnant off of pre-cum, which is why we tell people when we're doing sex ed that the condom goes on, assuming you're using condoms go on before the sexual activity starts, because essentially from the point where the bloke is aroused, there is always the potential for sperm to be in the semen, regardless at the stage. So it's not just ejaculate, the point at which, a bloke's semen is actually able to make a girl pregnant. That is stuff which is almost certainly lost on people who have not received a proper sex education. I would also refer to the fact of that they're in a state that just, where is it? That she says in here somewhere that she's in a state that have just, right, our state just banned abortion, right? Why is that important? I'm just not expecting very accurate sex education from a state that is banning abortion, right? So again, it leaves people, regardless of where you stand on whether states should or shouldn't, unfortunately, when people are not given adequate sex education, they can fall for garbage. There's a song on YouTube, fuck me in the ass because I love Jesus, right? Other kids that decided that actually only penis in vagina sex is sex, and therefore anal sex is, it's sort of like when you get a horny teenager and you give them a Bible and they're looking for loopholes, they will find just about anything. So that's what I'd look at here and kind of go, there's probably a little bit of charity that I owe towards a 19-year-old girl from an evangelical background. She may not have the knowledge to be engaging in the acts that she is. And yeah, certainly there'd be some information and education that probably needs to happen there. So when somebody comes at you in this situation, should you do this? Yeah, like obviously that's rubbish, particularly if we go to the end of the story. She's having a hard time reconciling what she did. I can imagine. So I have worked with quite a few people who have had abortions, and even for those for whom it is in line with their values, many of them still really struggle with it. Some have gone on to not be able to have children, and that has caused issues. Some kind of regret what they did because at the time they felt that they had to, but then over time they've sort of questioned whether or not they truly did. Others just don't like the fact they had to do it, and they sort of have an ongoing sadness about that. These are all very normal reactions for people who don't have this value set. I can imagine for somebody who is dealing with the guilt of, I shouldn't have even been pregnant in the first place because I was doing something that I'm not allowed to do. I can imagine that compounds things a lot. And I can only extrapolate from the situations that I have seen from individuals that do not have a values issue to what it would look like if there were actually further values issues involved here. So in this one here, what actually makes this situation a little more complicated from where I sit is sometimes you've got to ask yourself, who would be the client in this situation? And the client is not actually the girl that had the abortion here. The person who's written the thread about only the asshole is this person. Okay, so now if we look at that, what information do we not have? Right, so for the person involved, we know that she is living in her own apartment in sin and fornicating, right? So we know that. I'd assume that there is some separation going on there. She was also cut off from her parents for a year after she moved out. This is maybe true. They didn't speak to me for a year after I moved in with my boyfriend, right? So I'm looking at that and going, so this person actually knows the context that their sister is in. And yet they're clearly carrying their own hurt from the treatment that they've had. Yeah, that's fair enough. It's a rough experience for them to have gone through in terms of moving out, being cut off for a year, and then your sister, who has essentially, reading between some lines here, backed up your parents in what they're saying, and they're still telling you, living in sin fornicating is also fornicating on the side, and getting pregnant and requiring, like abortions and that kind of thing. So that would be a lot to sort of take in her situation. Does she respond perfectly? No, she did what siblings do, because I'm not perfect, and I would be hard pressed not to do this for myself if this was like my sister asking if it's going to be a virgin birth. Obviously it is a bit of an asshole thing to do. You really are rubbing somebody's face in it. And I think maybe if there's anything this person has missed, it's the sheer stress of an unplanned pregnancy. It's like there's joking around and there's sibling joking around, but I think we've got to sort of say there's limits somewhere. And as much as I could see myself making this sort of a mistake, and I have a lot of empathy for this person, it still is a mistake. this is one of those things you don't really joke around, particularly in a state that's banned abortion, from parents that cut you off for a year after you came out, after you moved in with your boyfriend. Like, this is probably not joking territory at this point in time. And given how seriously the sister takes it later, yeah, it probably was foreseeable, this person, because it seems to me like this is the 19-year-old sister is somebody who has made a stupid mistake and regrets it, but still holds on to the value set, in which case rubbing somebody's face in that in the moment is pretty rubbish. She says as much at the end. I do feel kind of bad about rubbing her beliefs in her face before agreeing to help her out, but ultimately helps her out. I took her and we came back. So at the end of the day, what do we have here? We have a sister who actually, in terms of her value set, she steps up to the plate and helps her 19-year-old sister out, despite what her sister has said to her about herself. She needs to move beyond herself in doing that. We obviously have, she considers her sister and the consequences. We're not told whether or not she definitely does tell her parents. So I'm reading from this, I gotta read between the lines, that she didn't actually force her sister to tell her parents before they went. But ultimately does help her sister out. And then the thing that I guess I'm most curious about is you do this, and then you jump on Am I the Asshole to talk about it. I'm still left sort of going, I'm not really sure what there is to talk about in this. The psychologist in me sort of goes, is this a lot bigger deal for you? And that this has actually brought up for you a lot of stuff around the difficulties you've had with your parents and that kind of stuff, and potentially your own strained relationship with your sister around religion, that after everything is said and done, you're still in this position, maybe. But yeah, I guess I'm not entirely sure. This situation is not as clear cut as to why the person wrote it as some of the other ones. And the actual question at the start in terms of am I the asshole? Because I told my sister that I wouldn't help her leave the state to get a medical procedure she's actively against until she told our parents. Like, she essentially says as much in her admission at the end about rubbing her beliefs in her face, because there's no other direction that's going other than to say, yeah, that would be a difficult thing to do. So yeah, I don't understand. This one confuses me a bit. I understand the situation at hand, and it strikes me as kind of stressful and a bit horrible. At least for the 19-year-old involved. It's certainly horrible for this person who has, at the hands of this 19-year-old, been told about how they're living wrong, who then essentially is shown to be a hypocrite by her own behavior. Is that completely unexpected for a 19-year-old? No, 19-year-olds are quite horny and they want to have sex, and sometimes they do have sex and sometimes they get pregnant. That's not news like anywhere in the world. So nothing really to see here. And I guess the takeaway is use birth control. Even if you feel like you've found a loophole in the Bible somewhere, that's not going to stop you from getting pregnant. Use birth control, and if it's a condom, it needs to go on before the sex starts. That's some good advice that a lot of people would be doing well to take. Anything we've missed here? No, I think we've covered that one reasonably well. So we shall finish it up there. It's good to do it, but yeah, that's honestly, for me personally, I don't know about other people's experience of this. It's one of the odder ones, just because I'm not entirely sure about the point of the exercise. So we'll finish up there. Good to see everybody. I guess you see me. I don't see you at all. Let's finish up there, and I will catch us at a different time. All right, see us.